If you don't know me, I am the founder of Love Cult, a mystic oracle and alchemist collective that specializes in divination. So tarot is something that has been very close to my heart for more than half of my life, and I'm so excited to share some of the insights that I have come to from my use and practice of tarot. So how many of you have heard of The Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell, like the concept? So most of you, awesome, good. So what we're going to be getting into first here is some connections and comparisons that I've made between The Hero's Journey and 5 different cards from the tarot. Because if you didn't know this already, the tarot, the major arcana of the tarot is the Hero's Journey story. They're exactly the same. From the Fool to the World, from being the Fool to becoming the world. And so before I get into it all, I'm going to read you all the poems for the cards that we're going to be going over tonight. And I've never done it like this before, but I'm going to read the 5 poems from the 5 cards as if it was all one poem. I'm not going to pause between to say the names of the cards because we'll get into that in a little bit. So, naive, they say, childish. You say transformative, because there would be no journey if there were no beginning. So concerned about winning, in such a hurry to cross the finish, they diminish the story. Caught in their worry, looking so far forward, they can't see the beauty offered. Tortured by their own minds, cornered by their need to acquire the answers. But you acknowledge that the sooner you let go, the sooner you'll know the great mystery is a gift. You're euphoric in fiercely forging your footway, foregoing fear, and pushing forward with the wonder-filled eyes of what some might call a fool. My, how we've fallen since we've forgotten the magic we hold in our hearts. How common it's become to deny manifestation and the inspiration that could pour liquid transformation through your veins and rely solely on the physical, forsaking all mystical. Misinformation spreading like poison through your thoughts instead. Misled through labyrinths of lies, eyes the size of dinner plates, somehow still missing all the signs. It's time you become re-inspired. Rewire your mind, excluding desire, and design a new kind of beauty, with broken pieces, fearless ideas, and a thesis of magic. Is this psychosis, or is it genius? It's time to surrender, to enter a new perspective and suspend your momentum. Direct your attention to letting go of control and trusting your brilliant soul in order to bring a fresh awareness to the knowledge you possess. Pause the patterns of cause and effect. Reassess the language you use to communicate. Hang up the phone and integrate the understanding. Don't allow this interruption to frustrate you. Have faith and know your fate will still be there waiting for you when you're ready. Take this lesson from your mother, dear. Rebirth cannot exist without death. It is a debt we each must pay in return for the honor of staying in these motel bodies, these rental vessels. Understand that this transition is nothing to fear. See the sunset clear for what it truly is, simply colors changing and energy exchanging. You will go, but still you'll remain. There is nothing to lose, nothing to regain. Nothing is final in your witnessing the cycle of this divine spiral. Every departure a brand new arrival, one you'll never survive. And that, my darling, is what makes it so ethereal. This is it, the moment you've been searching for. Your yearning is now satisfied. Your light is amplified by your gratitude and your kindness, blinding fear, anger, and pride with your utterly genuine compassion. All that you desire is attracted to you inherently, effectively creating a cohesive play of offense and defense, not at your expense, but to your gain. No more blame, no more desire. You know your name. It doesn't matter what they call you. Your high horse is lowered. You've designed your own closure. Standing in somber stoicism, not as token, but a bodhisattva. Your pursuits are noble, all else forgone in favor of the quest toward collective ascension. Congratulations, my beloved pupil. Enjoy the crucifixion.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. I forgot to add before I said that, again, if you don't know me already, you might not know that I've been writing this series of tarot poems. I finished the Major Arcana a while ago. So, and hopefully soon my book will be out. I'm just waiting on the illustrations. So, now I wanted to talk a little bit before I get more into this about how something I feel like is overlooked in the Major Arcana when people look at the cards a lot is the nuance of each card. There's something positive and something negative in every card, just like everything that exists. There's a pro and there's a con in everything. So we might look at a card like the Tower and freak out when we see that pulled in our reading, but it's really important to remember that there's beauty in the Tower as well. And same as there is negativity in the world in a way, but we'll get into that in a second. So first we're going to talk about the Fool. So with the Fool, we're starting off obviously in the ordinary world. This is where we're feeling that call to adventure. We might also experience the refusal of that call. I feel like that's not the case for everybody. Some people are gung-ho, ready to get there. But I know that for me, I had accepted the call, but I didn't realize what it was all going to entail. So it kind of was like, oh, I'm accepting this. I'm so happy. But then it was like, oh, wait a minute. Oh my God, I'm scared. So that's kind of like where we're coming at. It can feel very full of excitement, but it can also be negative in the way that we are romanticizing the journey in a way that you only do if you have never experienced it. We can't know what the difficult parts of something is going to be until we experience it, right? So, and that romanticization of it is actually, in a way, a good thing as well, because if we knew all of the negative things, it might hold us back even more, contributing to that refusal. So, the reason we move into not maybe everybody, but the reason why people who are using psychedelics in order to self-actualize start sitting with them and practicing with them is because you might feel like something is missing. You're searching for something within yourself, outside of yourself. There's like a yearning that you're looking for, and that is what the Fool is all about. He's embarking on this journey. He's excited to see it happen, stepping into the unknown and searching for that guidance, which I feel like mushrooms are such a good guide. Like acid is amazing as well, obviously, but I feel like acid for me is like more like fun. Oh yeah, this is just like a fun time. Not that I haven't learned things from it, but I feel like the mushrooms, like being something that is not synthesized and is not extracted, it makes it more connected to the earth, which helps us to be guided by the earth. So with the lessons that we are learning from the Fool here are to keep a beginner's mind. Remember that you're always a student. No matter how much of an expert you are in something, if you've decided that you can't learn anything else, now you have blocked yourself off from growing and getting any better in that field. So also to be bold. Allow yourself to make mistakes and learn from them. If you make a mistake and then you learn from it and it teaches you something, does that make it a mistake? That doesn't sound like a mistake to me. That sounds like a stepping stone. Yeah. So remember that the unknown is a gift. It's not something that you need to fear. The fear is maybe a little healthy, but remember that the universe is there to catch you and hold you through whatever it is that you are embarking on. So I feel like every single time I sit with psychedelics, the energy that I come at them with is the Fool energy. There's also other things that I add into that sometimes, but I always include that Fool energy. So moving on to the next one, we have the Magician, and this is where we're meeting our mentor, which is maybe even ourself. That's totally possible. It could be a person in our lives, obviously, but it could also be an entity that is contacting us and connecting with us in order to teach us from outside of our own physical bodies. Because we have these teachers that are metaphysical, that are just waiting for us to listen. And when we sit with psychedelics, it helps us to open the ears of our soul better and hear what they really have to say. So we're also crossing the threshold from the ordinary world into what in the hero's journey they call it the special world, but I think that sounds silly because it's the metaphysical world, and both worlds are special. The physical world and the metaphysical world are both special in their own ways. So I like to call them, instead of ordinary and special, physical and metaphysical. So then we also have within the Magician experience are the tests and allies and enemies. This actually lasts through a few of the cards, so we'll get more into that in a minute, but I feel like one of the tests that come to us in the Magician is to really see our own divinity and see that we have that power within ourselves, that we are magic. We are literally magic. We are made of magic. So recognizing that inner power is a large part of the Magician experience. And once we're able to do that, we can move into having extra-dimensional or intra-dimensional experiences. So experiences where we are experiencing the physical world, and then we see things that other people may not be able to see, hear things that other people may not be able to hear, and then intra-dimensional being when you literally astral project and now you are in another dimension, experiencing what that dimension has to offer. Another thing that I know Tom is going to get into more after I'm finished is the communication with the goddess. And I feel like the physical world is so in your face that it forces us in a way to kind of forget that the metaphysical is just as powerful and just as there as the physical world is. And I really connect the physical world with the masculine. It's very, the material just is very masculine in my mind, and the metaphysical is very feminine. So we are connecting with the masculine all the time by being physically here, and using our 5 senses to experience this world. And inherently, we don't get enough connection with the goddess. And I think that this is something that was a lot easier to do when we didn't have such like a modern lifestyle where everything that we do every day is has like an umbrella of technology over it. We don't spend as much time in nature, communing with nature and giving back to nature as we used to before we lived in these giant boxes of mildew. So communicating with the goddess when you're trying to move into a space of self-actualization, because to me self-actualization is finding a balance within yourself, and you cannot balance yourself if you're not experiencing and communing with both the masculine and the feminine. So this is something that I really love to work with when I sit with medicines. I know that Tom's got my back on this one. Communicating with the goddess is like, yes. So the next thing that we come to is the realization of the spiritual nature of everything. And I feel like this is something that you keep learning over and over and over again. Like every time I feel like, okay, I got it now. Yeah, everything is spiritual. The next time I sit with mushrooms, it hits me even harder. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's just something that the Magician is trying to teach us in the way that it interacts with us and with psychedelics. But like I was saying, there is negatives and positives to everything. So some of the negatives that might come from experiencing the magician are delusions, because sometimes the things that we are seeing and hearing aren't real. And that's just a fact. It's not one or the other. There are really things that are metaphysical that we can't see and hear all the time, and there are actually times that we are just being paranoid or hallucinating or whatever that might be. And if we dive too deep into the magician, then we might not be able to see the difference. So that's why it's very, very important to keep moving on through the journey instead of stagnating at one single card or piece of the journey or whatever the case may be. Another negative might be arrogance. I'm sure that all of you have seen this person that goes and does ayahuasca in Costa Rica once and comes back and is like, I have no ego now, I'm better than you. Like, that's not how it works, buddy. Like, sorry, but that is not how it works. So I feel like those people are diving too much into that magician and not understanding that recognizing that you are a part of the metaphysical world is just as important as recognizing you are a part of the physical world. They both go together. I'm going to keep saying this a million times throughout my talk, my piece of this talk. It is so important to have that balance. So the lessons that we are learning from the magician are to remember that you are magic, to use your power to manifest the things that you want and need, and to stay in balance with the physical realm as well as the metaphysical. So the next thing that we come to is the Hanged Man. So this is again where we are in that tests, allies, and enemies area and the approach to the inmost cave. And this card, as well as the next card we're going to talk about, which is death, are kind of interchangeable. You go kind of back and forth through them as you go through your journey. So with the Hanged Man, it's very much like a surrender or break, like evolve or repeat. You're going to have to let go. You're going to have to learn how to put things down and let yourself integrate before you keep moving on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. This is where we really actually start to release the ego. Instead of just saying, my ego's gone, haha, look at me, I'm so cool now. This is the actual release of the ego. And one of the negative things we might experience is resentment towards our full experience and realizing, oh my God, I was romanticizing this. This is so much harder than I thought it was gonna be. I have to really reassess how I'm experiencing this journey. So remembering that there's still that beauty in that romanticization, that is what allowed you to be able to move on into the journey. So try not to have that resentment for it. I know it's hard, at least for me, because I look back at my journey and I'm like, damn, I cannot believe I thought this was gonna be like a fucking like water park ride. Oops, I'm probably not supposed to cuss, am I? Sorry. I knew that was gonna happen. So anyways, yeah, this is when we really step into the new paradigms and new perspectives that we've been trying to come to through our practice of psychedelic use. And so some of the lessons that we are learning with the Hanged Man are to let ourselves rest, to push when you need to, but surrender when you need to. Again, that balance, it's so important. It is never one or the other, it is always both. And something that one of my favorite homies, psychedelic homies, has said so many times, hang up the phone. If you have received the information you were looking for, integrate that information and then come back to psychedelics later. If you keep going and going and going and pushing, you're not going to integrate that information, and all it's gonna do is be like water off a duck's back. It's gonna go in one ear and right out the other, and you're just gonna be in the same place, if not a worse place than you were to begin with. And so, so again, these two are very interchangeable. The Hanged Man and death are so interchangeable because like I said, you go back and forth between them a few times before you move on to the next part. So with death, again, we have test allies and enemies and our approach to our inmost cave. So with death, we are allowing these cycles to end. This is why the surrender is so important, because that allowing needs surrender in order for it to take place. So letting go of the resentment that you have towards the Fool is another part of the death experience that I feel like is definitely worth mentioning, because that resentment can be really hard to harbor and to hold on to. And I feel like the understanding of the death card being not just death, but rebirth as well, helps us to really see the journey for what it is and appreciate it for what it is, even with the parts of it that don't feel so good sometimes. I don't even like to call them negative, I call them undesirable, because it's not negative if it's helping you move forward. So another part of the death, and this is something that I talk, when I do like mentoring with people, this is something I talk about heavily. When you start to practice psychedelic use and start to self-actualize and move into your most aligned self, you're going to lose people out of your life. And that's going to feel like a death. It's going to feel like a death, but it's there, that is happening in order for you to experience that rebirth. And I'll use an example from my own life. I used to go out and hang out with people in the electronic music community so much in Portland. It was kind of like my thing. I was a promoter, and I unfortunately got like super addicted to cocaine. And during that time, I got engaged to somebody. And about a year and a half-ish, 2 years ago, I decided, you know what, I'm done with this. Like, I'm going to allow myself to let this cycle end. It was painful, I had to surrender, but I let that cycle end, and unfortunately had to break up with my fiance, which was such a difficult decision, but was so necessary, because if I was still dating that person that was still doing those things that I was trying to stop doing, I wouldn't have been able to stop doing them. And that doesn't mean that I have to have that person leave my life forever. I just need to step away until I'm in a place where I can have myself grounded, and then maybe I can go back and like be their friend again. But for the time being, I needed to let that person go. And I see this happen a lot with people, that they see themselves starting to lose the people in their life, and they think that they're doing something wrong, so they stop sitting with psychedelics and just go back to the person that they used to be. And let me tell you, just because you're losing people out of your life doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. There's always people, there's always more people, and if you keep moving forward into your own alignment, you will find the people that are going to be there for you, are going to hold you in compassionate accountability and actually be a support system for you rather than an enabling presence. So through that also, you are going to find new parts of yourself. So that is one of the beautiful things kind of about losing things out of your life that you thought once that you would have forever. You find that there are new things. There are more beautiful things that you couldn't even have imagined while you were still in this space of fear, I guess is what I would call it, fear of losing what you have currently. So with the lessons that we're learning from the death card, is understanding that those endings are fostering beginnings. There is no ending, that doesn't exist. There's no ultimate ending. Every ending is only there to help foster a new beginning. Also to prepare for what's next. Something that we used to do as a society for a very long time was that when somebody was going to die and we knew they were going to die, and this still is a thing that happens, not as much in the Western world, but we would prepare for that. Like, you would sit down with your family, you would have your will. You would sometimes, in different cases, like go through different ceremonies and things like that in order to prepare yourself for death. If you guys have ever heard of a death doula, that's kind of like what they do. And so I think that with the death card, that's one of the things to keep in mind as well, to prepare yourself for what is coming and prepare yourself for the ending of those cycles, which also entails appreciating those cycles while they are there. So one of the other lessons that we learn is to live for the journey as opposed to the goal, because we focus on the goal so much that we forget that the beauty is really in getting there. And then the last thing I have written down is transformation is painful but necessary. If you want to self-actualize, that's something that you have to be okay with, is the pain. Yeah, so now we come to the good part. They're all the good part, I'm just kidding. So, so we have the world. This is where we have our reward. We have our road back to our, because you know, the hero's journey is a circle. We have our road coming back. So this is where our knowledge is actualized. We're seeing things from higher up. Our perspective is growing. And when I say higher up, what I mean is like, so I'm standing right here right now. I can see this rug. I can see y'all. I can see these things on the walls. But if I went and stood above the roof, then I would just see the roof. And I would be able to see, oh, this is a building. And if I went even higher up, I could see the whole city. Oh, that's a city. But I wouldn't be able to see that if I was standing right here in front of it. So that's what I mean when I say seeing things from higher up. The higher up you go, the more you're able to actually take in. We also experience forgiveness of the situations that we've been through, of ourselves and of the people around us. I say that in that order on purpose, because I think that it's important first and foremost to forgive the situations themselves. That's a lot easier to do sometimes than forgiving people that harmed us. And that, I think, is the first step to forgiving those people. So forgiving the situation, forgiving yourself for being in the situation, and then reaching the point of forgiveness for the people around us. And again, we still have that balance. So there's a lot of positive in the world, and you might think that that's all positive, but the negatives that come with the world are having no room to grow and nowhere to go from here. You've reached your goal now. So there's a kind of stagnation that comes with that. So you don't want to stay there. You want to keep moving forward. You want to find a new goal once you've reached your goal of the world. Yes, so the lessons that we're learning from the world are to accept your wholeness and your worthiness, to celebrate your accomplishments. That's something I commonly see people have a difficult time with. I have a really difficult time with it myself, is that once we've reached our goal, it's really hard to be like, okay, that was that, I'm good, that's awesome, proud of that, now let's find another one. It feels a lot more like, man, I still didn't reach my goal yet because it moved, but you didn't consider that when you were thinking about how much you have already accomplished. So don't forget in these moments to allow yourself to be proud of what you have already done. Because if you are here now, if you are in the journey, if you are making it happen through all of that hanged man, through all of that death, then you have done enough. And you are enough, and you don't need to feel like, well, shit, I'm not where I want to be. I need to do more. It's always good to have goals, more goals, higher goals. If you reach your goal and then you're like, okay, that's enough, I'm done now. Oh, don't need to do anything else. Then I don't know. I really don't know what to think about that even. I couldn't even imagine being like that. I think that there's probably not very many people in the world that are like that. It's, that's where that stagnation comes in. And if you're just happy with where you're at completely and feel like you need to do nothing else, then you might want to find some new places to go. Because that's where, again, we're not growing. If we're just like, this is it, I'm done, I don't need anything else. But that that's one of the hardest things to balance, because it's really hard to hold in one hand, I am enough, and then in the other hand, but there's still more I want to do. So another thing we learn with the world is to allow yourself to have closure. Closure is not something that anyone else can give to you. I learned this by finally getting the apology from my father that I was looking for forever and it meaning nothing. I was like, whoa, okay, well, I guess that this is my choice now. This is my choice to let this go. So don't forget that you hold that inside of yourself. You choose that for yourself. And then again, that the journey is never over. It's never, ever over, and there's always more beauty to find. There's always more refinement to create within yourself. There's always more fine-tuning to do, more chiseling to make you that beautiful marble statue in the museum of your soul. So, okay, so we've got a couple more, but we return to death again for our resurrection experience. And our resurrection experience is very much more positive, I would say, than the other half of the death, or no, let me say desirable. It's very much more desirable than the other half of our death experience. And then we finally get to the world, like the fullest of the world, with our return, with our elixir of self that we have found in our journey. And then, as you can see, it is this little circle. So then we return to our ordinary world, and then we start the whole journey over. It's so. How many of you guys resonated with that? Does that feel like common to your psychedelic journey? Awesome, cool, yay! All right, how long have I been up here?
About a half hour.
Okay. So we'll do this very quickly. Is that okay?
Yeah, take
this next part.
Take your time. You're killing it. Just
thank you. Okay, cool. So this next part that we have, I know it's like really dark in here. You guys all have your handouts, right? So what we're going to be talking about are birth cards. And so birth cards were created, the concept of birth cards in the way that we're going to be talking about it today was created by Ruth Ann and Wald Amberstone in 1995. And I know that might seem like not that long ago, but every practice had to start at some point, right? Like, a practice being really old doesn't make it more legitimate than one that was just created. So, they are the owners and founders of the Tarot School. Super awesome website, highly recommend checking it out. So what they talk about with the birth card journey is this journey of emergence and return, which is very similar on par with the hero's journey in and of itself. And I've just got like a couple of questions here, or one question at least for each of these. So with the journey of the emergence and return, we're asking, what is your journey in this life and how will you experience your life? Then we move on to the essential task, which is we're asking, what is my soul task? What did I come here to do? Then we come to our unintegrated and imperfect realizations. And with that, we're asking, what are the things that you need to unlearn or rethink? That's like such a major part of healing is unlearning things and relearning things in different ways, because we move through life with our mind trying to just protect us. It's doing its best, but what it does often is put us into places where we can't see past ourselves. So it's very important to keep that unlearning and relearning going all the time. And then with our energetic continuum, we're asking, where do you need to find more balance? And then we finally come to the defining question, which is what drives you at the soul level? And so there are, I'm like blanking on the amount of combinations there are, but there's a specific amount of combinations. There's not like a whole, you can't just like mix and match any of them. But the information on how to do it is written on your sheets. So I'm just gonna quickly go through this because I did not think that was gonna take me as long as it did. But anyways, so you wanna start by breaking your birthday into 4 groups of 2 digits each. and then adding them all together. If the sum is a 2-digit number, add those 2 digits together. That will be your first birth card. Now, more often than not, this will result in another 2-digit number, so reduce that number to 1 digit by adding the 2 digits together to get your second card. And the card with the higher number is always first. So, on rare occasions, adding the digits of the 2-digit number will result in a single digit. In that case, the single-digit number is your second card. Add 9 to get your first card. If the sum is a 3-digit number, add the first 2 digits with the third digit, that's your first birth card. Reduce that to a single digit again to get your second birth card. This is pretty much all of the different ways that this could turn out, but if it does turn out differently, let me know and I will help you figure it out. This one is actually my own birthday, and I had to figure this out myself. So if the sum of the first 2 digits plus the third digit is between 21 and 99, then you add those 2 numbers to get the second card, and then add 9 to get the first card. So, if the sum is 19, you have 3 birth cards. This is the only case in which you will have 3. Otherwise, you'll only have 2. And this is because 1 plus 9 is 10, and 1 plus 0 is 1. So, yes, like I said, if you have a different thing, you weren't able to figure it out, or even if you go home and you do it at home and somehow you come up with some solution to it that isn't gone over in the question or in the steps, you can message me on Instagram or email me and I can help you figure it out. So I think that's all I got. But I did want to talk about the workshop that my collective has coming up. It's Intro to Tarot Mastery course. It's going to be March 3rd, 10th, 17th, and 24th from 6 to 8:30. Every session is different, but you don't have to come to every session if you don't want to. So I do have scholarships available. What we're going to be going over is the history of tarot. We're going to be going over all the different types of cartomancy that exist, which is cartomancy is divination with cards. We're going to be going over everything from shuffling to spreads to memorization, how to read your spreads without referencing back to a book or a website, which is something I hear a lot of people say they struggle to let go of the referencing back to the book. And so I think that the key to memorizing the cards, I know it's very difficult because there's so many, the key is to memorize the numbers and the suits. And once you've done that, because all of the numbers, every 5 out of all the suits, all 4 suits, has something to do with some sort of loss. For example, every number has its own thing, and then you read it through the filter of the suit and what the suit means. It's a lot easier to memorize the cards that way. And then, on top of that, there's so much symbolism in the art. This is why it's very important to pick a deck that you resonate with, because if you can read the symbolism on the imagery, then you don't even need to know what the card means. You can just look at the symbolism and see the universe speak to you through that symbolism. So that's something else that we're going to talk about, is how to build our own relationship with symbolism. I think that one of the things that holds people back a lot from reading tarot is and practicing tarot is that everybody thinks there's so many rules. There's no rules to tarot. It's magic, and it's really personal to everybody. And if everybody were to sit and read the cards to some dogmatic view of what they are, then we would only need one tarot reader in the world. And, we wouldn't need any more of them. There's something special in finding what the cards mean to you and allowing them to speak to you through your own subconscious in a way that is personal and not dogmatic. So, all right, I hope that was good. I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for coming. Yeah. Woo! Oh yeah, one last thing. There's a bird there's a spread for the birth cards on the back of this piece of paper. This is actually a spread that I was given by my guides, and I've never taught it to anybody, so I'm really excited and happy to be able to offer it to all of you, and hopefully you try it out and take it out into the world and teach it to more people. I love you guys.
Yeah. There it is. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to part 2 of this talk tonight, Mushrooms Through a Tarot Lens. For those of you who attended or attend either my microdosing classes or a talk I gave a couple months ago called Amanita muscaria, Mysterious Mushroom, you will have heard that I hinted at some of my own practices in those talks. And I believe it was at the Mysterious Mushroom talk that Brother Anexus said something along the lines of, yeah, history's pretty rad and all, but I'm kind of curious about your own practices, right? Your own beliefs about this. Well, tonight you are all going to get a shitload of that. With regard to my mythopoetics, I have a goddess-based craft, as Ayana mentioned during their speech. Now, that does not mean that my pantheon is godless. It's just to say that they are minor deities to 3 major goddesses. And so we meet our first dilemma. There is no goddess card in the tarot. Fuck. Well, sort of. The goddess is present, but she is hidden between 2 cards. The High Priestess and the Empress.
Rise, darling. It's time to wake the intuition that aches to be released. Uncage the beast of sacred knowledge that lies within your light, and ride into the night, guided by your soul. Your role is one to take pride in, but don't be mistaken, it's also a burden. So don't be prideful, lest the pride wool be pulled over your eyes. Don't treat this as a prize, but as a responsibility. Have dignity in your divine presence and ability. Soften and receive, so you can let the essence of divine feminine be your medicine, bringing you to the entrance of heaven. Can you see the beauty surrounding you? The abundant production of substance everywhere you turn? Don't give in to scarcity or the misgivings they keep you in. I tell you now, know that this sweet kiss of perfect bliss belongs to you, that this mother, nature's kind, will provide what you need. Confide in her and she will supply the answers that you seek. Give thanks to her divinity, denounce the cruelty forced upon her face, and nurture her feminine beauty so that you can be worthy to bask in her grace.
The Empress represents divine creation, as evidenced by the small leaf that appears under her scepter. The baptismal fountain to her side symbolizes abundance, health, and fertility. In this particular card, we see a stream, but it is the same symbolism. By their very nature, baptismal waters also signify death and rebirth, a not unknown factor of some very deep psychedelic experiences. The Empress also represents feminine energy, and again, my form of psychedelic witchcraft is a goddess-based fertility religion, so feminine energy is very important. The other half of our goddess appears in the High Priestess card. Historically, this makes sense because it was sometimes the priestess's role to take on the form of the goddess during ritual. We see this with magical systems that still survive today. The Ordo Templi Orientis, or the Thelemite Church, therein the priestess takes on the form of the goddess Nuit. And I believe, but I'm not totally certain, are there any Alexandrian witches in the crowd at all? Yeah. Okay, James? Yeah? Okay, does the priestess take on the role of Isis during the, like, whatever Alexandrian witch mass thing that they do? I don't know anything about it, I'm just...
Yeah, no, I'm Gardnerian rather than Alexandrian.
Okay, in Gardnerian, does the priestess take on the form of a goddess?
Absolutely.
Okay, and what is that goddess?
It's been a long time.
Okay, whatever, but she takes on the form of a goddess? Okay, I don't know anything about Gardnerianism or Alexandrianism, except that they are complete rip-offs of Thelema. And since in Thelema they do that, I just assume they do that, so thank you for being my informant, James. Now, the high priestess also wears a crown that is similar to the goddess Hathor from ancient Egypt. Now, interestingly, in the ancient world, during the celebrations of Hathor, the celebrants would drink an entheogenic beverage, a mandrake-laced beer. Has anyone here ever worked with mandrake before? Okay, it can get really, really weird, as all solanaceous plants can, but in the right setting, they are remarkably entheogenic. Now, the veil on the high priestess represents the division between the subconscious and conscious realms, or occult knowledge which is obtainable through mushrooms, or other areas. I just like mushrooms. And they work like so well. With psilocybe, this represents the division between our world and the celestial realms, what the ancient Gnostics, for lack of a better term, would have called the pleroma, or the fullness, and what your grandmother calls heaven. Both the empress and the pomegranates that the high priestess holds symbolize fertility. Now today, fertility is not too much of an issue, like we're not rebuilding, after something, some sort of mass extinction. So fertility magic for me is seen more in the realms of abundance. And there is a historical lineage of this in Europe. In France, this goddess was, in some parts of France, I should say, this goddess was known as Domina Abundia, the Lady of Abundance. In some parts of Italy, she was known as Fortuna, the Lady of Good Fortune. Money, whether we like it or not, is the fertility of the modern world. So when I do fertility magic, I'm not casting spells to have children. Nothing against children. They're awesome. They're just not for me. I am casting spells of abundance for myself, my friends, and my friends' children if they should have any. I also cast spells for an abundance of water. Now, a moment ago I mentioned that the priestess sometimes takes on the role of the goddess. In mushroom tarot, for lack of a better word, it is no different. Only here the empress and the high priestess join to represent one of three goddesses: Gaia, Hecate, or Circe. Now, these are just their pedestrian names, Gaia, Hecate, and Circe. I do not use their sacred secret names because we're not in ceremony and they are a secret. And my form of psychedelic witchcraft is a secret society, so I actually shouldn't be telling any of you any of this, but I do so in hopes that maybe some of you want to join me. So I'd like to go briefly over the special archetypal attributes of these goddesses so we know how to work with them within mushroom witchcraft. I'm going to do this because I'm a little tall. That is much better. Gaia is the source of all life and consciousness. She holds sacred association with all psychedelic plants, but specifically mushrooms, both the psilocybe and the amanita, and ayahuasca. As Punk and I, we've talked about this, and actually, all three of us have talked about this. Mushrooms, at least within my form of psychedelic witchcraft, mushrooms are the path to Gaia. They show you that Gaia is real. Ayahuasca, however, is Gaia herself manifest on Earth. Hecate is the light and will that life and consciousness use to progress forward. So I like to think of Hecate as sort of this little tugboat pulling all of life and consciousness that is Gaia across the universe. With her torches, which anyone who knows Hecate knows she comes with torches, and her divine will symbolized by her being a goddess of the crossroads. Circe is the alchemical process that allows these transformations to take place. She is the evolutionary principle. She has sacred association with cannabis and all solanaceous plants. In fact, the ancient Romans actually called the entheogenic mandrake Herbum Circeum, Circe's herb. With this brief outline of the hidden goddess of the Tarot out of the way, I'd like to return the floor to Ayana.
My, how we've fallen since we've forgotten the magic we hold in our hearts. How common it's become to deny manifestation and the inspiration that could pour liquid transformation through your veins and rely solely on the physical, forsaking all mystical. Misinformation spreading like poison through your thoughts instead. Misled through labyrinths of lies, eyes the size of dinner plates, somehow still missing all the signs. It's time you become re-inspired. Rewire your mind, excluding desire, and design a new kind of beauty, with broken pieces, fearless ideas, and a thesis of magic. Is this psychosis, or is it genius?
With psychedelic witchcraft, the magician becomes the witch. All three goddesses of the psychedelic witch are present in the magician card. And yes, for those that know him, I chose this picture because it looks exactly like our friend Sage. No? Yeah. So anyway, magic as a source of consciousness is granted us by Gaia. Hecate is evident by the will of the witch or the magician, and Circe is seen in the transformation of the fool into the witch or magician. Historically, witchcraft came in two broad forms, which for ease we shall call tonight the Death Walkers and the Witch Dancers. With the Death Walkers, the goddess, followed by a trail of the dead, visits the worshiper. So in a sense, we want to think of this like the other world, the spirit world, source, whatever we want to call it. We're talking about the same thing. That thing that we're all talking about comes to us, okay? And enchants our space. Now, in Ireland and in Scotland, women who would engage in this sort of practice were known as fairies. And in continental Europe, the Inquisitor Bernard Guy speaks of fairy women to the same effect. So that is the first level of psychedelic witchcraft. The goddess's enchantment comes to you. In the second instance, the worshiper travels in spirit, we would say has an out-of-body experience or astral projects, to some far-off place, usually a mountaintop, where she will celebrate and honor the goddess. The Latin word for this, back in medieval times, was transvection, which basically just means to move across. If anyone's actually interested in that, I wrote an entire book about the witch dancers called The Witch's Ointment, which I think we still have a copy or two in the shop. In this case, we go to the goddess. The goddess doesn't come to us like she does with the Death Walkers. Within Tarot symbolism, the Death Walkers are represented by the Moon card and the Amanita Muscaria. The Witch Dancers are represented by the Sun card and the Psilocybe.
Deeply macabre mystery swirls through your mind like a fine mist, surrounding your being in the unknown beauty of delusion. Confusion can become a cloak of illusion, secluding you from true understanding. But harnessing the confusion brings it into balance as a bright ball of light, leading you through the dark, winding hallways of anxiety. Your subconscious can only behave in the ways which you have trained it. The subconscious can only respond to the input it obtains. To create an inner environment of positive change, you must be able to trust the programs running in the background. Surround the confusion with compassion, and it will not last. It will be cast quickly into the fire of your freedom from trepidation. Your intuition is calling. Answer.
Here I'd like to address how the tarot symbolism of the moon corresponds with magical uses of the Amanita muscaria mushroom. It might seem like the Amanita should be represented by the sun because of its large orange or red or yellow, depending on the variety you have, kind of golden color, right? Amanita kind of looks like a big red bright sun. However, when we are talking about occult practices, things are both not exactly as they seem and exactly as they should be. The Amanita muscaria is represented by the moon within my system of psychedelic witchcraft for several reasons. For starters, the mushroom begins its life underground in the roots of coniferous trees, like we see here. So the tree has the natural intelligence from Gaia. It feeds it into its roots, and from those roots, they mix with the nutrients in the soil, and out comes a beautiful mushroom. The underground is symbolic of dreams and death. Hecate is goddess of both realms. The association of the moon with Hecate is obvious who has ever worked with her. Anyone in here ever worked with Hecate? Yeah, Miriam, I know you, but anybody else? Okay, cool, Ali, awesome. Yeah, so you all know that Hecate is a moon goddess, right? So she's been a moon goddess forever. Her association with the Amanita muscaria comes from her being an underworld deity, because Amanita is an underworld mushroom due to the beginning of its life being underground. Amanita muscaria is also the carrier of dreams. If anyone's ever worked with Amanita, they bring the deepest, most lucid and vivid dreams you will ever have in your life. It's fucking awesome. I cannot recommend it enough. And according to legend, Hecate is also the carrier of dreams. Like the goddess of the Death Walkers, the Amanita muscaria brings the other world to you. This happens due to the nature of how it grows. Trees are conscious, permeated with the natural intelligence bestowed by Gaia. The same natural intelligence that Gaia teaches the tree teaches the mushroom, and the mushroom teaches you. In other words, when you eat the Amanita muscaria, you stand in place of the mushroom itself, while the mushroom stands in place of the tree, right? Because the mushroom is now the teacher. But before that, the tree taught the mushroom, so it becomes the tree, and you become the mushroom. All just being baptized with the natural intelligence of Gaia. The moon card is linked, and I tried to do something cool. Oh, I hope it works. The moon card is linked symbolically with the underworld through Hecate and her dogs. Of course, Hecate is also the goddess of dogs. But here, however, we get not dogs, but a dog and either a wolf or coyote. There are different interpretations. Hecate is the goddess of crossroads or possibilities. One possibility is the path of civilization, as represented by the dog. The other is the path of the wild, represented by the coyote or the wolf, pointing us to a certain duality in nature. Part of that dualism is found in that thin line between civilization and savagery, or in this case, between the dog and the wolf or coyote. Circe is actually wrapped up in all this, but I don't have time to get into that tonight. Another part of that dualism is found in both the conscious, represented by the land, and the subconscious, represented by the water. The Amanita muscaria, due to its remarkable ability to generate vivid and lucid dreams, straddles this world between the subconscious and the conscious. Hence, Amanita's use in dream divination and its association with the moon. But we can go even deeper. You'll notice that there's this little lobster fella here. The lobster isn't fully in the water, but it seems to be crawling out of it. Recall the baptismal waters of the Empress. Through a mushroom lens, it represents death and rebirth. I see this lobster as swimming in these baptismal waters, bringing the mystery of the subconscious, as represented by the water itself, into conscious awareness as represented by the land. This is important because it parallels another aspect of psychedelic witchcraft that we've already covered, that of the death walkers, wherein the other world comes to you, and that's what this lobster is doing. Just like the Amanita muscaria, it does the same thing. It brings the subconscious to the conscious mind. The towers remind us of the two pillars on the High Priestess card, representing either good or evil, female or male, or the tensions of opposites which the High Priestess oversees. Between the towers we have a path, here giving us a crossroads, and as we know, Hecate is a goddess of she is the goddess, the supreme goddess, the only goddess of the crossroads. So the short of it, if you wish to work with Hecate within psychedelic witchcraft, I find she pairs superbly well with Amanita muscaria, dream divination, the subconscious, and the death realms. And should you seek inspiration for getting started, I would recommend throwing the moon card on your altar, should you have one, or just on a table, and thinking about its Hecatean and Amanita symbolism. And with that, we move on to the sun.
You have become dazzlingly illuminated, boldly hosting humble knowing in your eventual success, and beaming brilliant patterns of power over the fear of entropy. Not arrogant, simply optimistic, active positivity overflows from the pores of your energy. Mindful discernment now comes naturally. You admire each piece of the puzzle for what it is, instead of trying to change it. Every memory is gilded with the clarity of conscious confidence, creating a space that allows you to build infinitely flowing vitality. Never losing sight of what really matters, the journey, not the destination. You've reclaimed your sovereignty. My child, you have earned your prize. Accept it and bask in the warmth of your divinity.
The sun is represented by psilocybe mushrooms, which is the mushroom that allows access to the reality of Gaia, or what I call cosmic insight. Gaia, as the source of all life and consciousness, feeds us life and consciousness through the radiance of the sun. The sun is power, abundance, safety, warmth, and vitality. Just as a deep psilocybin experience can re-energize the weary soul, so the glorious rays of the sun brighten our day. Here in the Pacific Northwest, we get a whole lot of sun. No, we don't. No, we don't. We don't at all. So it helps if we fill ourselves with it. Here, microdosing and threshold dosing psilocybin mushrooms unlocks the sun in our own hearts. Here we leave the oncoming realm of the death walkers and soar through the skies with the witch dancers. Only we're going beyond the highest mountaintops the planet has to offer and heading straight for the clear blue sky. Psilocybin represents the flight to the other world and cosmic insight represented by the witch dancers, who were said to attend such pagan revelries on mountaintops. Since the Sun card precedes the ascension to heaven in the Judgment card, we can see it as the transition point between the material and spiritual worlds, where the embodied spirit is transformed through Circe into pure spirit. And I think psilocybin mushrooms personally work great for this kind of ascension. Now, on this card, we see a child representing innocence and perfect happiness in that innocence. This kid right here does not give a shit what anybody thinks about her. But do you think she gives a flying fuck? Like, seriously? No, she doesn't. She doesn't. And I asked. And she said she doesn't. Okay, such is the lesson we must take from both mushrooms and witchcraft. This kid right here is living her best life, being her authentic self. And the authentic self is exactly what psilocybins show us, beyond the masks that we all wear every single day. She is letting her freak flag fly, like literally. She is carefree, knowing that it all works out. She holds the wisdom that we all had before ignoble cultures corrupted us. That we are all magical beings, as Punk said before. She further represents a point I wrote about in my book, Microdosing Magic. The more in tune you are with your own childlike wonder, the more magical you are. Children, like this kid right here, are creative geniuses. Seriously. And we were actually, all of us were born creative geniuses. And there have been tests conducted in this area that actually shows that. And if anybody wants to ask during the Q&A, I'm more than happy to bring it up. Anyway, the point is, psilocybin reminds us of that creative genius. The horse represents strength and persistence, which are both necessary for integration after a deep psychedelic experience. And you'll notice that one of Punk's favorite cards, the death card, we have similar symbolism. Riding a horse, holding a banner. Its tarot and astrological associations aside, Gaia is present in the psilocybe. Here, instead of using the Amanita mushroom to connect us to natural intelligence, the psilocybe connects us with cosmic insight. Okay, the kind of stuff that we all knew before we were born. The stuff that this kid still knows. It's the same stuff. Like the Amanita, the reason for this has to do with how the psilocybin mushroom grows. Remember, Amanita grows underneath the ground, that's why they're an underworld mushroom, right? Well, psilocybin grows above ground on unconscious matter, like cow shit, right? And dirt. Not conscious things like trees, which the Amanita grows from. Well, this is just proof of Gaia's existence. The ability to create consciousness through the mushroom out of unconscious matter, like cow shit. I think that's pretty cool. And definitely evidence that I am right. So, unlike the Amanita muscaria, which connects us to the natural intelligence, the psilocybe connects our soul to the goddess head. This light from the sun descends upon Gaia's bosom and pulls that Gaian consciousness from the cosmos into a beautiful little mushroom. So when we eat it, we now stand in place of the mushroom, and the mushroom stands in place of the celestial realms. Thank you all so much for being here. Punk and I are happy to take your questions, should you have any. We've left you speechless.
Oh,
Sorry.
Oh.
Gave it warning.
Well, can I ask you all a question? Can Punk and I take a quick selfie with all of you?
Oh wait, no, this way. You're gonna go that way real quick. Yeah, right. Well,
It's totally the same.
There we go.
thank you. Cool. So no questions? It's all good.
Lots of questions.
I think
Somebody-
it takes a second for people to digest.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, I talk a little fast, right?
No, it was
Sorry.
good. It was good.
Gardnerian goddess was Iradian, so.
Oh, Arati. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
And then Theranos.
Certain, yeah. Cool. Sir.
How would you factor in a lot of, like, let's say ancient Egyptian culture that did focus a lot on, you know, ancient goddesses, such as like Nun or Mat, kind of two coin or two sides of the same coin, and kind of their practices around like the psychedelic usage of a lot of different plants as well.
Do you wanna-
I only have one thing to say, and it might not be right.
Go for it.
I feel like in a lot of cases, these goddesses are just different iterations of each other. And so working with those goddesses, just figure out which ones they connect to and speak to that goddess's energy. Because, for example, when you're speaking to Isis, you're speaking to Inanna, you're speaking to
Demeter.
Ishtar,
Yeah, Ishtar.
Demeter, and so many different other energies. These energies are just things that through different cultures have been named different things, but it's all the same energy. So that would be my 2 cents.
I have the same 2 cents on that one. It's where it's their energies just called by different names across different cultures. That's all. You know. In the same way that if I were to say, hey, everybody sit down, or say, siete, say, both mean the same thing, just 2 different languages.
A good label for that is archetype.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yes,
They
exactly.
embody principles
Yes.
and energies
Mhm.
and access thereto.
Yes.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Allie, then Morgan?
I was just gonna piggyback
Okay.
off of that in that, like,
Or
how
Morgan
important
and
is it to like say that and feel that energy, but you have to feel the intention or feel the feeling of whatever energy you're calling it, whatever archetype, right? It's like this, you know, maybe hermetic principle of thinking, feeling, and then acting, because we're saying, but with the knowledge and the emotion, right? That all 3 of those kind of need to be tied. We can't just call on a goddess and expect, you know, obviously expectation is a whole nother thing, but I just wanted to I guess, note that the importance or emphasize the importance of that
Oh, of course.
tribe.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really very important to have a relationship with whatever it is that you're trying to call on, whether it be an entity or an idea or any type of energy at all. If you just walked up to a stranger and you're like, hey, can you help me? Can you like take me to the airport tonight? Obviously they're gonna be like, no, what the fuck? So treat these energies like they are people also, because they are people in your concept of like people being other entities, other people around you. Like, consider them as if they are literally standing in front of you and you're talking to their physical selves. Yeah.
Yeah, it's more about, it's not about being like, oh, goddess, do this thing, and that thing happens. It's about sitting with the goddess to keep yourself on that path. At least for me, that's how I do it. Now, that might not work for everybody. Some people, they don't need that at all. They're just like, yeah, I'm just fucking going, and they get it, and It's like, that's awesome, but I like keeping it within a magical container because it keeps myself in check. So
Yeah,
that's why I do it that way.
Thank you.
Also, from a shamanic perspective, when you encounter that deiform, that energy, ask how that entity would wish you to address it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, one of the things that I've found in my, they don't actually have names. Names is such a human thing, like giving names to things, that's what we do. And when we talk about like, oh, we created gods in our image, well, that's what I, resonate with in that sort of perspective. We make goddesses and gods in our image by pretending that they operate the way we do. They don't. They are divinities. We are humans. They operate like, does anyone in this room operate the way ants operate? No, because they're ants and you're a human. It's, you see what I'm saying?
Alan?
Yeah, I heard a lot of good, throughout both of your talks, different, practices that you do that incorporate all of these ideas. I was wondering if you could just, kind of recap and share just, any of your favorites. I heard some that were, putting the cards on the table. There was some, journal questions offered or anything like that, just to reiterate.
Totally, yeah. Journaling questions are one of the really big things for me. Sitting with a notebook and meditating on a question, and then really trying to find what those things mean to me, what the answer really is. Because if you ask me a question right now, maybe I could answer it and it wouldn't be inaccurate, but it wouldn't be the full picture, right? Even if you asked me what my favorite food was, I could tell you fettuccine alfredo, but that's not necessarily the case, right? It might be something one day, something another day. And so it's really about going off on those different branches of figuring out the truth uncovered underneath each piece of yourself. And then another one of my practices that I really love is just using an altar every day, having an altar set up inside my home. I pick a card from the major arcana every morning and I put that on my altar, and I try to commune with that archetype for that day. I take it as kind of like the universe being like, this is helpful for you today. And then on top of that, ceremonies and rituals. Not all the time, because you don't want to keep, like I said in my talk, hang up the phone and integrate a little bit, but sometimes you need an overhaul. So sometimes you need to do a cord cutting. Sometimes you need to do a personalized ceremony that is all you, and you can sit and you can talk to your guides and your ancestors and say, what is it that I need to do? And they might tell you in a simple way, and they might give you a brand new practice that nobody has ever done, and then you get to create this new thing that is specific to you and I feel like for me, it feels so much more real that way. It feels like, I don't know, I don't even know how to say what I'm trying to say, but yeah. Wait, you should go first, and then you do.
So I'm currently working on a book that actually outlines all of my practices and rituals and how I get into psychedelic witchcraft. It's pretty involved. It would take 10 minutes for me to explain just one spell and what I do to get into that state of awareness. And I don't want to torture everybody, so I'm gonna just forego if that's cool and just say that there is a book coming out in about a year or two on that very question.
Okay, wait, really quick. Also, my collective love cult does do personalized ceremonies. We sit down, I have a form you fill out, we sit down, we come to your guides, and my guides come to your guides. We figure out the personalized of what you need in that moment, and then we move on and do it a week or two later when things have really integrated fully what it is that you're doing and you're trying to do, and then we overhaul with that ceremony and get on your way. So if you're interested in that, let me know.
Yeah.
The short of it is, like I sort of outlined in my talk, I work with 3 principal energy. Well, there's 4, but 2 of them go together. Life and consciousness, so just being alive and doing things. Magic or will, through Hecate, crossroads. And the the alchemy of those changes represented through Circe. And all of my spells incorporate all three of them in different ways, and that's why it would take a long time for me to unpack it.
I've got one more thing to say. Living your life as if it is a ritual. That's another important thing. You can meditate while you're doing anything. Meditate while you're doing the dishes. That's one of my favorite places to meditate, actually, is doing the dishes. Taking a shower. Everything that you're experiencing is sacred and beautiful. When you get in the shower, experience that water as a gift from Gaia, washing away all that you don't desire to be a part of you anymore. Everything can be a ritual. So, yeah.
And the last thing I'd like to say is, I'm just stalling because I know you have a question. Okay.
So Ayana mentioned something about not everything we are going to hear is true, or something to that effect, or like, so something that, like, in a psychedelic integration circle, a nexus actually brought up is, it was somebody was mentioning, how do we know like a psychedelic vision is true? And like how to rely on that, and how do we know when we're maybe it's wishful thinking or being misled somehow? And something he mentioned was you can ask for confirmation. And I thought that was really helpful. Is that something that you work with?
Yeah, actually, I'm so glad that you're saying this, because there was a whole thing that I forgot to say about that part, so yay. Having a community surrounding you that can keep you accountable, make sure that you're on the right path and not going off trail too far. Sometimes it's okay to go off trail, but we don't want to get too far out there in the woods. We won't be able to find our way back. So I think that asking your guides and ancestors and what have you for confirmation is good, but sometimes that can still have a confirmation bias because it's still us asking. And so if that wishful thinking is there and we do want it to be real so badly, we might not be able to hear what they truly have to say. It's really hard to break down that desire, you know what I mean? So I think that that's a really important part of understanding what it is that is true and what's not true that you're seeing and hearing and all of that stuff, is to create an inner space where you can be so honest with yourself that you can tell yourself things you don't want to hear. And that is not something that people are just born with. That's something that you have to cultivate and practice. And again, I think that having that community surrounding you of people who are also on the same path as you, who you can like grab their hand and be like, hey, I need some assistance, some support, is really, really important. So I think you guys do Integration Circle here, right? Yeah, and so that I was gonna mention that in my speech thingy, but I forgot. So thank you for.
It's actually next week on Tuesday.
Perfect. Next week on Tuesday. Yeah, that's a beautiful place to find those people who can hold your hand and be there for you in the accountability and all of that stuff. So yeah.
I mean, my solution is I just eat enough mushrooms where the differentiation between my thoughts and other thoughts like is the same as somebody asking me a question. I didn't invent Eden asking us that question. And when I'm in that deep mushroom space, I can tell the difference between my own thoughts and thoughts that are coming from elsewhere. On top of which, I've also noticed that those thoughts that come from elsewhere tell me things and show me things sometimes that I really would not choose to think or see on my own. Especially, just real quick, I'll cut it short, I won't get into the full anecdote, but the first time I met Gaia while on a very high dose of ayahuasca, she appeared to me as a 16-year-old girl. I assure you, I am not a pedophile, and I would not have imagined as I would be soaring through space holding the hand of a 16-year-old girl. And the reason she took on that form was exactly because she knew I would never think of that, and that it would embarrass me every time I brought it up, like right now. She knew that. That's why she did it.
Morgan?
Yeah, on the communal aspect, like, can you guys speak on like divination in community? I know about integration in community, but like, is divination in a communal aspect like potentially more powerful? Can we retain more from the experience? Is there something that goes on when multiple, and I kind of feel like I know this answer as I'm speaking this aloud, but I just want you guys to speak on it a little bit.
You have literally been a part of when we've done that.
Yeah, totally. I
just
think that
did
it would be
it on
important to say, because a lot of this has been about the hero's journey, and a lot about self-actualization is obviously related to the collective consciousness. We understand that they're one and the same, right? And so I guess I'm answering my own question.
You've been there.
There we go.
All I would add is that I feel like, so when I do like a collective reading, it's a more overall view of the cycles, as they're like a lot more vague. It's impossible to do a collective divination and get everybody's specific thing. So what we're looking at is the cycles and not the specifics. And when I do divination for one single person, it's those specifics. But honestly, those specifics are still those collective cycles. So it goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
Agreed totally. Anything else? Okay, cool. Well, thank you all so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. Please come out, check out Sanctum anytime. We have a whole lot of events coming up.